I'm Bonnie Gale, and I define myself as a willow artist. I live in central New York, and I've really been doing this for about 34 years. I have a business that imports the European basket willow into this country. And then in 2004, I started building living installations with willow. And also throughout this period, I make the baskets, I teach the baskets, I make custom baskets. So if you ask me what I do, it's all about spatial containment and definition, and it's all with this plant material called willow. And sometimes it's dead willow, as in the sense of baskets and other dried things I make. But the recent shift really has been more into the living, using living material, building these structures as an art form. The live willow, though, is grown in New York State because you cannot just bring live material into this country. So it's grown. It's actually a biomass willow, so it's able to grow 12 feet in a year. And relatively straight rods, but without branches. That's what I use as the building block. And willow has a tremendous ability to self-root as well as self-graft. So I can take this dormant material and I can literally stick it in the ground in the spring and it will grow. And then I go through a process of weaving it. Sometimes I use a metal substructure for some of the more exotic shapes. But yes, arbors, tunnels, gazebos, domes, even outdoor living rooms. And then multifaceted structures that have many of those items all put together. It's a wonderful design challenge. So I build a model ahead of time, and then I'm out on the site with helpers, and there's always issues that come up. There's always design issues that you solve right there, right on the site, and that's a wonderful time when you solve all those issues right there out there. Because every site is unique. I would say it chose me. In school, growing up in England, going through the equivalent of the high school, geography was the subject I loved. So I think it was sort of in my bones, so to speak, that I love space. I can go into spaces I haven't been in years, and I know what's different, which is a really strange thing because I'm not consciously going in and photographing a room. So space is how I do things. I've been teaching line dancing for about 15 years, and I teach it by, I see the space of what the steps are going to do. There was a point in the early 80s when I went back to the UK. I met with willow growers. I knew sort of I had a love for willow, and it really went from there. I started importing the material, and people, guilds out there on the West Coast wanted classes in it, and so I started teaching, and then this living willow movement was starting in Europe. You know, a lot of things start in Europe and then move over here. And in 2004, I started building the installations. There was quite a bit of interest. I think as an artist, though, I'd say that you need a certain amount of time in whatever art form you're doing, and you develop your own style. So clearly now I have my own style of the work that I do. And there are really very few people that do this work in this country. I learned from someone in England that does much more refined work. So if you look at my work, it's quite refined. It's not rustic. I use the most beautiful material that I can, and I put it together in a way that creates beauty. So when people see my work, whether it's, I mean, this is slightly bragging, but when they see my work, whether it's the dead stuff or the live stuff, they say, "Isn't that beautiful?" The word beauty is one that's used a lot. It is so absolutely challenging. You know, as a sculptor, I could work in concrete or metal, but I'm actually working with a live material. So there's a whole level of complexity there with regard to the material, keeping it alive, transporting it, planting it, and so on. I'd say the power of what I do comes from creating three-dimensional living space in an environment that often is barren. It may just be, you know, a mowed yard or something like that. So it adds a lot. It adds a great deal. Yeah. It's also alive. People will come up and say, "This is bamboo, isn't it?" So I find with all that I do, whether it's the dried stuff or the alive stuff, and all the teaching environments that I have, and also being an artist, it's all about education. It's all about educating people. So there's often a lot of conversations about what the material is and what this is and what it will do. I mean, first of all, the concept that you can build something that's alive and will grow and will leaf out. And you know, it leaves out very, very fast. You know, within a week or two, you've got green leaves on it. But then maintenance becomes an issue. So I love functionality. And that really ties in with the willow, because the willow is functional. I use it in a way that's functional. Even the art is still functional. I might do some really extraordinary bits that are totally art, but I would say that primarily everything I do is functional. But I'm not a gardener per se, so I don't really have my little plot. I'd rather join a CSA and have the organic vegetables, you know, once a week or something like that. Willow's highly, highly functional, and it's highly historical. You know, I know that phrase, "it chose me," you know, might sound, you know, quite strange, but in a way, it was like a coming together that really felt meant to be. I mean, I don't think I'd be in it this long if it wasn't. Historically, it's an amazing plant. It goes way, way back in history. Right from the word go, it was a material that was chosen by man to be extremely useful. And perhaps because of my leaning to functionality, it then appears to be, you know, quite right. And what we're talking about here is also the ability for it to be coppiced. So for me to get material for that sphere, it's cut every year. And most of the things I do, if you know, there's a certain amount of plants that can be cut every year and they spring back. Humankind wouldn't have material for basketry unless we've found that characteristic, because otherwise that one-year rod would then have branches on it, which we don't really want.